Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Authors Vox. This week, I'm joined by Vivi Partridge, and the author and illustrator of Quiet Crossings, an excellent graphic novel that deals with grief and coming to terms with grief. Vivi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm an author, illustrator. I'm based out of Toronto. Um, I have 2 cats. Yeah, that's all I can think of on the spot.
It's great. As you said that, I accidentally hit my chair thing and dropped about 5 inches. So I might have ended up as a member of the inn that it
Oh, what
here's
an
some Quiet
unfortunate
Crossings.
way to get there.
Yeah, yeah. I have a heart attack because my chair drops. Okay. Uh, two cats. I love cats. If you can't, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a painting of a cat wearing a Star Trek outfit right
Oh,
behind me. I
cute.
ask, yeah, it was a gift. I ask everyone who's on the pod for the first time, the same question. Now, Quiet Crossings is what I would call in the strictest definition of fantasy. But as this is a fantasy podcast, I ask everybody, what is your favorite magic system? Now that can come from books, movies, anime, TV, video games, anything.
Yeah, I saw this question when you sent it to me earlier, and I got really excited because I read this book series when I was, like, a teen called Carry On, by Rainbow Rowell, and they had a magic system where the spells were stronger if the phrase that they were using popular. And so, like, there were, like, older families in their wizarding world. It was kind of like a play off of, like, Harry Potter. So they had a wizarding world, and their old days were trying to get, uh, Shakespeare to be trendy again in, like, their muggle world so that they could use their fancy spells. But it also meant that, like, pop culture references could have a lot of, like, power in this world as well. So, like, there was, like, an invisibility spell they used, which was, "These are not the droids you are looking for." And that I
Mhm.
always found really fun.
Mm. That is that's incredibly funny. I love that. I love when they do when reality and fantasy bleed into each other like that. I've never heard
Yeah.
of that series though, which is surprising. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's very much like it was aimed at teens. It was like one of these boys love romance books that was also a fantasy book. So it flew under lots of people's radars, but like it hit like a target demographic like a wildfire.
Okay, fair. Yeah, fair, fair. Let's talk about you now. Let's jump right into you before we start talking about Quiet Crossings. So, writer, illustrator, how long have you been doing both, or either? Is another good
Yeah,
question.
I mean, I've been drawing ever since I can remember. Uh, both the grandmothers on both sides of my families were visual artists, and my mom was a children's book author all my life. So we always had tons of children's books in the house. And although I wanted to strictly draw, I didn't know what to draw, and so writing just kind of came later. So I'd have like prompts and like dialogues between characters. So I guess I picked that up in like high school, and that was just
Yeah.
like I was writing a fantasy novel that had no structure, no end, and it just kind of went on forever. And I was showing my friends between classes. And that one's been long abandoned, but now I know what I'm doing, and that was the right first step.
I mean, many, as I can attest from my students, many a high school novel has gone abandoned. So that
Yeah.
makes total sense. Um, so if you're both of your both of your grandmothers and your mother being a children's book author, would you say that's what pushed you, not pushed you, but that would inspired you into being a writer?
Definitely, like, there was no person in my family telling me no, which was already, like, a good like, stepping off point. I also got my first job at a retail comic book store at the Toronto Public Reference Library. It was called Page and Panel, and so, like, at 16, I was there, and there'd be, like, quiet days where, like, we had 3 customers, and I would just end up reading comics all day. And
For
that really just pushed me, be like, "Okay, no, this is what I like, and this is what I want to do, I think, forever."
Fair. That's very fair. I Who doesn't? I will say I used to be a custodian, and when for high school, and when the other custodians would leave, I just hang out in the library and read comic books as well. So I
Yeah.
definitely I feel that. So
It's a great way to spend your
let's
time.
talk about like it is 100. It's a fantastic way to spend your time. That's what I would do at work. Is I'd have them on my phone and just read them on my phone too. Who doesn't love a good
Nice.
comic book? Um, Quiet Crossings. Beautiful story of people
Oh, thank
coming,
you.
coming to terms with. I loved it. I'm a huge fan for any story that is about people learning about or dealing with death and grief. Um, it's it is a really nice story about coming to terms with mortality and one's own passing. Was there something that like inspired this narrative, or was it a natural sort of process of development?
There's a few things. I like to say it's a bit of a tapestry of lots of little things in my life, as most stories and books end up being. But I came to like the the breakthrough of like, oh, this is a book, this is a story. I was like in a relationship where we were like off and on again, breakups, not breakups. And I was feeling really bad about it. And I spent a week at my grandparents' house during this time. And um yeah, it was just like the first year that I had like spent a week or like a extended period of time with my grandparents, and I like noticed them getting much older. And so I was feeling
Mm.
very existential about that, and I was listening to, like, one album on loop. It was an EP like, EP album called "I Need to Start a Garden" by Haley Hendrix. Sorry. And there was a song on it where they mentioned, like, an inn at the edge of the world and a light where this person is smoking, and there was just, like, this vivid imagery where I all the, like, aspects there's, like they mentioned sending a postcard to a city, and there was, like, all these little things that I wanted to, like, pick at. And I don't know what the original meaning to this song would have been or has been. I haven't been able to contact Haley at all, but this is what my brain kind of perceived this song as, and so I just kind of followed that, and that slowly alchemized itself as a story.
Hmm. Well, I think "In at the Edge of the World" is a very, very apt description for Quiet Crossings. And I would just say, like, it was, as I said, it was a beautiful story, and I was lucky enough to read it a little while ago. I had read it basically the moment I got the copy. I read the
Oh,
entire thing. And I'm
yay.
like, I was like, every time anyone's like, I have a comic book for you to read, I'm like, I'm down. I'm reading it. That's fine. Um, And one of the things that I love about comics, one of the things that I love about any graphic novel, comic, anything like this, is the art style. And this is something that always sticks with me. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you're into comics, you have a favorite comic artist, you have, inspirations and whatnot. Um, but your story is so beautifully written in that it is heartbreaking in a sense, and there's a very clear, not clear, I would say it is a juxtaposition that your art is very light, and it has like a cartoonish kind of quality to it. Um, was this might sound ridiculous, but was it intentional? Because I have seen, I believe, Vivisect, your other work, is a little bit different in art style. But was this intentional to kind of create that dynamic between message and form?
A little bit. I definitely this is a YA book, so it was aimed at teens and like young adults. And I didn't want to give them a book that would make them more depressed. Like I was a very angsty teenager. Like lots of the people around me were dealing with mental health issues and they were unmedicated because that was just the time that we were in. And I do touch on a case where one of the characters was trying to commit suicide. And so I wanted this book to like touch on those themes and also like be a comfort, like show up and, like, be a warm cup of tea, and, like, you can sit down with this, and we're gonna get through it together. So that was kind of
Mhm.
the reasoning behind more of a like, a cutesy, cartoony art style. Also, that just comes a bit more naturally to me, I think, in general. So it was easier to lean into that.
That makes sense, and it's I think it works so well, and it lends, I think, another level of intricacy to this story. And young adult book, I feel this is something I've talked about before. Young adult books and books for teens don't get enough credit for being
Mhm.
actually, like, quite monumentous in their undertaking of trying to speak to young adults and teens. And I think this book would do exactly that. They would speak very well to people who are going through things like this. Um, but when you're writing something like this, when you're writing a graphic novel and and planning out the panels, was there a version of this story where Selena, our, you know, I don't want to say heroine, protagonist is the word I was looking for, uh, who spends the majority of the time talking to Iris, Karen, and Charon, sorry, and Alice, and the gentleman who helps fix the truck, whose name I can't remember right now.
Charlie.
Was there Charlie? Thank you.
Yeah.
Was there a version of the story where instead of like I don't even know how to put this. Instead of like extended conversations with certain characters, we're working more with like a every new face that shows up gets its own little vignette, and then we move on from that person.
There was definitely at one point I wanted it to be, like, tons of different characters in, like, different time periods where they were all kind of in this weird liminal space, and Selena could pull a lot of things from it. But that seemed way too ambitious of a undertaking, and this was my first book, and so I, like, really had to strip it to its bare bones to be able to finish it. I was also
Mhm,
given, like, 2 years. I showed, like, the first chapter, which was, like, a college project that I had made to my publisher, and they went, "Could you finish this in 2 years? Because that's where we have a time like, a slot open for publication." And I just
mhm.
went, "Yes, I will try my best." And the rest is history.
Yeah, just taking that leap. That's interesting because it is nice though that we do get these, and I highlight this in some of these later questions. But I think it I think it speaks more to have people like Iris and Charlie have a longer period of conversations
Mhm.
than like a quick like, hey, by the way, I was in the war, and then they just get on the boat and leave.
Yeah.
Um, Now speaking of the boat, Charon, however you say his name,
I use
is
them
a very
interchangeably.
yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it's here or there. It's taking from Tom Holland's recent thing, where was like, I wouldn't say father because it would have been in Greek. I would say Greek mythology is such a beast, but we have a prolific legend because he is the ferryman of the River Styx. Which, by the way, when writing out this question, it took me literally like 20 minutes to remember ferryman. I kept wanting to say riverman, and I knew that wasn't true. Um, in some retellings, we have him. He's blind. In some, he's like a full skeleton guy. But you went with mute, or at least minimal talking.
Yeah.
Uh, was this was this like a decision that was inspired from a different retelling of Charon, or was it just something that you felt worked best because of the dynamic between like Alice, who is very loud and talks quite a bit, and then you have Charon, who's very quiet and doesn't?
I think definitely the dynamic played into that choice, and I think also I wanted to, like, exercise my hand at drawing sign language because I don't think enough books have that, and comics as a medium lends itself very well to something like that. Um, yeah, I think also death I wanted Alice to very much be bubbly and, like, an embodiment of life. She's, like, over the top. She's so happy about everyone being there. And then Charon, in comparison, would be death. And I thought it was more ominous if he didn't say anything. It, like, used his, like, few words very sparingly, because I don't think you get to have a conversation with death as much as you wish you could, and I wanted to get that across with the book as well.
Mhm. Uh, that's I didn't even think of the connection between, sign language, and representation. That's interesting to know. That's good to know because, you're right. Now that I think about it, I don't you don't see well, I wouldn't clock it because I'm not looking for it, but you don't see a lot of, sign language in comic books. But, Alice, on the other hand, because we have the ferryman of the river Styx, one of the most famous Greek myths of all time.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have Alice, the owner and the operator of the inn at the end of the world. Um, Very mysterious in a sense. She's very upfront, but she's very mysterious because there's very little explanation of why she's there. She seems to serve as like a death counselor, or more specifically, like a transitional coach for some people. But is there more to her than meets the eye, or is she the upfront person we see? Like, is there something more powerful behind the scenes, or is she just Alice?
There's definitely there's a bunch of the my earlier drafts for this book that went more into, like, the background of how the inn was made, and even my editor was pushing me on, like, "Hey, we should have some more backstory on these characters." But it didn't really fit with the pacing of the story, so I ended up ultimately scrapping it, and I might use it for a prequel book. But I basically, Alice is the last of her kind, very much close to the elves from Lord of the Rings, where she gets to kind of pick when she
Mm,
dies, but seeing as she's the last one, she's gonna kinda, like, be there for the long haul. But she came from, like, a group of people who were based in this liminal space by the riverbank, where there used to be a bridge that would go to the other side. And not to reveal too many things, because I don't know if this is gonna get picked up as a book, but the bridge basically has to get torn down, and Charon ends up being the only person from the other side now trapped in our world, never to fully return to his. And in
mm,
exchange, Alice feels so kind of bad about the whole situation. The two band together to now build an inn where they can both fill out their duties from both their people as best as they can in this new climate. And yeah, they just kind of work together as a team and are like a great partnership to one another.
mhm. Um, Excellent. That is nice to know. I I f I was trying to rack my brain and wonder if there was any sort of Greek myth, like, that kind of tied in with Charon that had a name similar enough to Alice where
No.
I could be like, "Is it there?" But it's not. That's the conspiracy theorist in me. Uh,
I love that
you
though.
know yeah, I look for details. I'm an Easter egg hunter for sure. Iris is another character that I mentioned briefly, but Iris is, to me, the most interesting. Um, because she and I feel like we're dancing around Selena a little bit, but Selena, uh, as amazing as a character she is, I feel like the supporting cast in this really kind of highlight the realness of this book, and Iris is one of them. She's sort of the wake-up call that Selena needs to understand that leaving, is not meant to hurt others rather than, that staying behind is actually hurting the people who want to pass on.
Yeah.
And Iris is great because she not great. This now that I've said Iris is great, my next point is gonna make me seem like a monster. Iris remembering her children and her husband, uh, and finally realizing why she has to cross over, um, is such a pivotal moment in the book because it really takes the story from, like, you know, not like the casual observer is like, "Oh, a bunch of people are going on the boat," to like, "Oh, Iris is getting on the boat. This is a big deal." When you're writing a character like Iris, and when you're writing someone whose experiences are far outweigh, um, that of the reader, because if this is for YA and teens, they're not gonna be married and with children.
Mhm.
Perfect world, that is. Do you find it hard to not hard, was it a challenge to make it as emotional and real as it was? Because it is a very, like, real moment, I would say.
So I don't think it was really too hard for me to write about, like, Iris leaving being too sad. I knew from the get-go she would have to leave. Um, and I really kind of, in a awful way, enjoy writing sad bits of stories. I find it like I'm a very emotional person. I'm very good at imagining the saddest case scenario for things. And I love to torment my readers in a weird sense. I'm like, I thought of this sad thing. Let me make you cry as well. Um,
Okay, fair. Very
it's
fair.
Yeah, I don't think it's, like, the best way to go about it, but, like, I know I love to cry at a book, so I'm thinking maybe I'm putting out what I would like to receive in a book, and that has been
Mhm.
kind of my philosophy in writing thus far in general.
Um, I relate to that more than you know. There's a sign in here it's over on one of my bookshelves that says, "Making players ugly cry." It's in a frame, because in my opinion, that's how you get people to really experience literature,
Yeah,
right?
fully.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I write D&D campaigns, I'm like, "How can I make this damaging mentally and emotionally to everybody at the table? How do I do this so everybody leaves a worse person?"
Or at least a changed person.
Yeah, at least a changed person, at least someone who goes home and just has to think to themselves, "Why would I agree to do this?" There's a certain realness, that to this particular book of yours, though, that really grasps me because it is so emotional and so sad. Or more aptly, it's very real and it's vulnerable in how grief and longing are so closely tied together. And Iris is one, side of that coin, and another side is the girl who shows up with the hair, who really wants to write a postcard to her parents, whose name I now can't remember.
It's, Lily.
Lily, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, when you're writing this, and when you're writing a book like this that's so emotional and so real and so raw, do you find it's hard to have this balance of like reality and fiction? Or was it something that came easy to you? Or was it a challenge, that's stuck with you throughout the narrative? And not the writing of it, but having to sort of experience and explain the pain of some of these characters, including, Lily, Iris, Charlie, and Charlie's husband, or partner. Was it something that stuck with you for a while?
Definitely. I think when you're writing a book, all the characters kind of exist within your head, and so I'm just kind of holding all these sad, grieving people that are figments of my imagination, truly, but all very much inspired by real life people around me. And I think, like, writing has been the best way to alchemize the sadness that I've seen and felt, um, in, like, see like, yeah, just hmm. I'm not sure if I'm answering this question right.
I think
Um,
you are. I think you
okay.
are
Thank you.
answering it actually quite aptly. And it's hard. You're right. It is hard to put into words because
Yeah.
it is a feeling.
Which is why I think I also rely on comics a lot in my writing, because sometimes the words aren't enough and sometimes you do need to just show something. Um, yeah, like I had a very close friend of mine. their partner died of cancer during the pandemic, and his name was Jim, which is why I named the character of Charlie's husband Jim as well. So like I was going through that and like my grandparents getting older, an off and on relationship, poor mental health within my friend group, and all of that just kind of came to a again like a big tapestry of my life and like made this book. And I think really reaching into those like memories and like times and moments when I didn't have words, I was able to like really take the essence of that and put it into a book.
Mhm. That is an incredible point of view, and I wanna touch on something you said quickly before we get to the next, you know, 2 questions. Um, you said you rely on comics to tell and, like, help explain things, and I think, in this current age that we're in of a lacking in certain literary skills in students, and
Mhm.
in adults as well. One of the most pure forms of literature remaining is that advent of the comic book and the graphic novel, and stuff like Quiet Crossings, or, just pulling 2 out of the hat here, Fun Home and Mouse. You have these incredibly profound topics that you can finally explain and show real emotion and feeling behind, because it's all laid bare on the page, much like Quiet Crossings, which was, something that I think people don't talk about enough, and they don't give enough respect to comic books because they're like, "Oh, that's a comic book. How good can it be?" And you're like, "Well,
Yeah,
funny you say that." That's, and it's very, it is, in a way, it's heartbreaking to know that, Quiet Crossings is sort of born of this place of, grief and pain that you experienced, but it is also, it's good to know that it comes from a, not good to know. That's the wrong word. It's it definitely lends to and explains exactly how real and how effective it would be in talking to people about grief because of the realness of it, which is very nice.
for
So,
sure. And
thank you.
if I can go on a bit of a tangent, I think people are very much starved for a deeply human connection right now, especially in like the wake of like all the AI stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
no
I
kidding.
think that's the best thing you can do is like reach into like the nitty-gritty human parts of yourself, and people will very much enjoy that.
Mhm. I will, and, just, and thank you for sharing all of that, because it is an undertaking to share that in a public forum such as this. And I would lie and tell you that hundreds of people are gonna watch this. We'd be lucky to get 10, but still, it's
Hey,
it's anybody,
at
right?
those 10 people, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. If you're
You're getting
listening
the
to
real
this,
scoop.
you guys are doing great. Um, I have 2 structure questions left for you, and these structured questions are not about, Quiet Crossings, and they're not necessarily about you specifically either. They're 2 questions that I find, um, are questions that have to be asked. Not have to be asked. I asked them, one of them because it's important, and another because I think other authors want to know. And the first one, and you and I are both in Ontario. You're in Toronto. I'm in London. Very, very close. And and if you follow, unfortunately, anyone who's in Canada, if you follow Canadian politics, recently there was a decision made by the Ontario government to lower literacy goals so that more schools can hit their literacy targets, which is the wrong, it's the stupidest way to go about that.
Yeah,
Um, and we're really struggling in North America as a whole in literacy for various reasons, and it's important that we up those. So let's say, in this hypothetical world, you're standing in front of a high school English class, or a college English class, university English class, whatever. And the students have asked you specifically to give one good reason as to why they should spend more time reading and writing. What would you tell them?
I tell first of all, the world is very noisy and overwhelming at the best of times. The one place where you're not gonna find ads is in your books.
That's such a
And
good answer.
If you wanna disconnect for just, like, a hot 2 hours, read a book. It's
Mhm.
truly, like, one of the best things you can do for your mental health. Also, you can escape into a world you make if you would like, and then you can write it. And you can be kinda like me if you want and try to see what you can write to make your friends cry the fastest.
Very smart.
I will say seeing someone's face react to something you write is so much more dopamine worthy than, getting a like on Instagram.
Yes. I agree with that fully. And Megan Bowen, my dear, dear friend who always complains that everything I write is incredibly sad, I hope you're listening to this and understand that I am not alone.
Yeah.
There we
There's
go.
2 people on this team.
Yeah, there's more. This is we could field a full 9 infielders on a baseball team if we really tried. Um, so let's say, you're one of the very few people we've had on here who have taken the tradition not the traditional publishing route, but have a publisher, which is
Mhm.
I think, invaluable, in terms of your own experience. So let's say we have an author listening or an illustrator listening who is looking to get their book published. What would your advice be for them?
I'd say, first of all, be your own biggest cheerleader. I think too many people have an imposter syndrome when it comes to, like, your beginning of writing and illustrating. Um, Constantly show up. If there's events happening near you, go to them, talk to people, make friends. People use the word networking a lot. I've found throughout my career, networking is just adult slang of making friends. Um, Also, yeah, don't talk about your projects to people. Talk about your project to, like, don't ask them if they think it's a good idea. That's not the right question. Tell them that you're already making a thing and that you really like it, and tell publishers about it. I think I've gotten most of my writing gigs just because 'cause I've sent publishers half-finished comics going like, "Hey, do you think this is anything that you would like to stock?" And they've just said yes, and I feel like I'm playing some sort of, like, long con. I'm like, "They don't know that I don't know what I'm doing yet." They just
That's good. That's good. That's a good answer. So I cut you off there, but that was very
No,
funny. I
that
really
was
enjoyed
pretty
that.
much it. That was the I used to I go to TCAF a lot. There's tons of publishers there, you just take all their business cards, and then you'll email them. That's also,
Mm,
like, the best thing to do.
okay,
But
cool.
don't
What is
wait.
TCAF?
TCAF is the Toronto Comics Arts Festival.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's really big in indie comics, and, like, there's a bunch of them popping up all over Canada. I was just at, DCAF, which is Dartmouth Comics Arts Festival. I will
Huh.
be at PCF, which is weird because they just took out the A for some reason, but that's Prairie Comics Festival in Winnipeg, and I'll be there in 2 weeks. This podcast will probably not be out by then, but,
This comes
uh
out in 2 days. It will be there.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be
Yeah.
there on September 5th and 6th. If you're in
Fantastic.
Winnipeg, come see me.
Yeah. If you're in Winnipeg, absolutely go to anything literary festival wise.
Yes.
Um, that's very what has surprised me most about everyone's answer so far is I've learned that this is in its own form, there's a very wide range of things out there to support young authors or new authors. I shouldn't say young because that sounds ageist. Uh, to support new authors and publishers.
Mhm.
So it's nice to know that there are options, especially for people looking to get into indie comics because I think those are so important in today's age. Um, that is all the structured questions I have for you. Now we have one final segment remaining, and that is our either or questions. Now I'm going to ask you 10 questions, or I'm going to try and ask you 10 questions. I might lose count and you only get eight, but that is mostly
That's
because I
fine.
have the world's worst attention span. You can answer what I'm not expecting a reason. In fact, it'd be better if you didn't give a reason, just either or. You can say
Okay.
either or you can also say both. Neither is also an option that people seem to
Okay,
think
so there's
doesn't exist.
4 options.
There are 4 options.
Okay.
and use your determination to decide. Okay, so are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Perfect. Okay, first and foremost, Google Docs or Microsoft Word when you write.
Google Docs. I can't afford Microsoft Word.
It is weirdly expensive. Uh, Pen and paper or digital art programs to do
Pen and
your
paper.
illustration. Nice, good choice. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Ah, okay. X-Men or the Avengers?
Ooh, neither. I wanna say all the kids teams, they're the best.
Oh, like the Runaways and Power Pack. Okay,
Yeah,
good
they're
choice.
way better. They're cooler.
Yeah. Yeah, they have better storylines.
I mean,
Uh, uh, Downtown or the Distillery District?
oh, neither. They're both too expensive. I would rather be in the East End.
Fair. Coffee or tea?
Neither matcha?
Okay, all right. That's the one I never consider. Oh, what was I gonna say? Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Kayaking or canoeing?
Canoeing.
Good choice. Movies or TV?
Movies.
Animation or live action?
Animation.
And Western or Japanese animation?
Japanese animation.
Okay, good. Final question. My Neighbor Totoro or Spirited Away?
Neither. Porco Rosso.
Ah, that's a good one too. Damn. Okay. All right. That was potentially 10, maybe 11. Either or answers. This has been my conversation with Vivi Partridge. You should absolutely go pick up either Vivisect or Quiet Crossings or both. Both is also an option. So is neither, but I wouldn't do neither. I would do both, either or.
Thank you,
Vivi,
Nick.
before we leave, oh, you're welcome. Vivi, would you like to promote anything other than, I mean, you can also promote being at the Prairie Comics Fest, but you already have. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
I'm gonna be at Toronto Fan Expo this weekend, so starting on the 27th, to the 30th. And what else? I will be performing a live comic, at the Houndstooth on, I think, September 12th. Please check my Instagram because I might get that date wrong.
Okay. All right. And your Instagram is
Vivi_doodles.
Vivi underscore doodle. So if that is a few things, first and foremost, if you're going to Toronto Fan Expo, um, if you aren't going to Toronto Fan Expo, you should be going to Toronto Fan Expo. But if you are going to Toronto Fan Expo, be sure to look for Vivi. I Fan Expo is always fun. I always go dressed as Star Trek characters. I haven't decided if I'm going this year or not. And you should also follow Vivi on Instagram, Vivi underscore doodles. And as always, my friends, I will see you next time and stay magical, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, Vivi.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was delightful.
Yes. And I can't wait to see what comes out next. And I will absolutely pick it up and we can always talk about a different book as well. So
I would love that. That'd be
thank you.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'll see you later.